1. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the problem we have in status quo is that you have a conflict of interest. You're a teacher who's a professor working in uni part-time, but you also have a day job. You're also a doctor. You're also trying to work in a hospital, fund a cancer institute, and publish research reports. The harm here is that teaching often goes to the back burner and becomes least priority, and the ones who get harmed the most are your students. The students who are at the consequence of getting the remainder or the crumbs of the time you have left, and the students who experience things like free cuts or teachers who meet them for 10 minutes and then dismiss them only because they have other priorities. This is the problem that we see happening internationally and nationally in state universities and colleges, and even in the Ivy League. Teachers simply are not paid as much, and therefore they still have to have a profession in order to be able to give them the cash flow they need to be able to sustain themselves. And this is exactly what we want to challenge when we want to be able to allow universities to re-engineer the way that faculties or teaching staff allocate their time. LO asks a nice question. How are we going to significantly limit their time? What Aaron already told you was that we're not going to necessarily ban research or ban working in these think tanks. It's just a matter of prioritizing the allocation towards teaching, meaning majority of your time, if you're a teaching staff as a lecturer or a professor, should be dedicated in the classroom as opposed to the opposite, wherein minority of your time is actually given to your students. As long as it's majority of your time spent in the classroom, you can still do all your teaching, etc., or do the other research or things you want to do as a second priority. If you're a faculty or teaching staff, your priority should be teaching classes, showing up, being able to help your students, etc. How exactly is that going to happen? We recognize that this is not like a model debate, but in order to make it out so we can explain how it works, is that there's going to be a transitionary period, meaning current faculty who spend majority of their time not teaching and doing other stuff are going to be given an ultimatum. You have to take more units and do less time doing your job or research if you want to be employed by the university. That is to say, if they want to still continue teaching and staying in that reputable institution, like UP, like Harvard, they make that switch and change their schedule accordingly. But, and this is the important part, if they value their outside work, like working in a hospital because they're a doctor, or publishing because they really love being a researcher more than that of a teacher, they can just leave. They don't have to force trying to do two things because, as they say, try and catch two rabbits, but you end up getting none of them. We don't want them diverging and dividing their time at a point in which students get harmed. The previous speaker asked, oh, how are students going to be able to learn? We tell you 4 structural reasons on how they can learn, absent their teacher having to moonlight and part-time and multiple gigs. A, directly going to the institution. If you are a med student, go to a hospital, be able to talk to people there. I'm sure they're willing to be able to have an intern or a clerk. B, take an OJT or an internship or a part-time job in that field you want. So if you're in a law school, for instance, instead of having to be contingent on your prof, talk to a real lawyer, someone doing it part-time, as opposed to someone who is doing it not full-time, right? C, do some degree of self-studying online or in real life. We have a library, we have so much rich online content to allow you to be able to learn. D, student organizations through alumni networks and upperclassmen to be able to guide you and help you given their proximity to your situation. It isn't necessarily nuanced to the only way you can learn is through your professor. We think it just doesn't work that way. But before that, CO, go for it. It's a matter of being able to funnel resources accordingly. Meaning, if you're a teaching staff, fucking teach. If you're a non-teaching staff, you can do research elsewhere. The bullet we're willing to take is that research might be slower on our side. We're not here to like say we're doing everything, but we rather have slower research as opposed to students who like aren't getting a quality education. People who are flunking out, people who my partner characterized to take on a lot of student debt at a point in which they aren't being able to be handheld. Research is fucking important, but teaching students, getting them to graduate, and actually giving them a quality education is far more important. So when my partner talked to you about things like improving the ratio within the classroom or being able to really allocate that funding to increase the minimum wage of teachers to be able to ironically get more people to be able to stay, to enter the academe, and allow investors to actually see that, oh, this Ivy League, they're actually producing quality talent as opposed to it's just being a legacy reputation. What have I been talking about in my extension? My extension is really about the role of the university and how we can actually get better research on our side, wherein people can be funneled accordingly to doing what they need to be able to do. The problem in status quo is that these teachers are just spread too thinly, and we think that we need to be able to break that and be able to have an incentive structure to push them to be able to decide. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They want the rep of being a cool professor, but at the same time, they still want cash flow from working in the hospital. We think on our side, we actually push the selfless career of being a teacher, even in a rich country, even in a private institution, even in an Ivy League. Because we have to understand that there are so many people who really have a passion to be able to teach and want to be able to do it, but their slots are being taken by these old geriatric guys who are like dicks, who don't even teach, who continue doing their part-time gig, publishing papers and shit, all that circle jerking at the expense of their students. On our side, we restructure that. We're able to weed out those who are not efficient and be able to put those who have the capacity to be able to be altruistic and the motivation to be able to teach at the position to do so, wherein we free up capacity and improve the student-teacher relationship, which ultimately improves the quality of life, the quality of education for those students, regardless of who you are or where you come from. We are very proud to stand on side proposition.